The stars beyond the viewport glimmered with cold indifference. Supreme Fleet Marshal Valrix Thorn stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching as warship after warship emerged from hyperspace. Each arrival rippled space itself, light bending and snapping back into place as centuries of Imperial engineering asserted their presence in the void. 130 warships. Not a patrol, not a warning force. An execution fleet. Valrix allowed himself a slow, satisfied breath. 411, 800 years, the Karnathi Dominion had ruled this sector of the galaxy. Empires had risen, pleaded, rebelled, and vanished beneath Karnathi fleets. Civilizations had burned themselves out trying to challenge a power older than their written history. And now it was humanity's turn. Valrix's scales, dark obsidian with faint silver fractures earned in earlier campaigns, shifted as he smiled. At nearly 4 centuries old, he had commanded fleets before humans had even left their home system, before they understood jump physics, before they were anything more than a footnote in exploration archives. And yet they had grown bold. Marshal, a voice spoke from behind him. All vessels are completed assembly. Formation holds. Valrix turned to face strategist Corvin Saul, his second in command. Young, sharp-eyed, eager, like most of the bridge crew, Corvin had never faced humans in battle. He had only read the reports: trade vessels, fragile hulls, limited armaments, soft-bodied creatures dependent on machines for survival. Primitives with ambition. Excellent, Valrix said. Transmit fleet address. 1 hour. I want every commander listening. Corvin nodded and moved away. Valrix returned his gaze to the stars. Beyond the swirling stellar fog, known as the Nerith Expanse, lay human-controlled space. Dozens of colonies, millions of lives, all built in territory the Dominion had claimed 8 millennia earlier. Whether they had used it or not was irrelevant. Ownership was not about occupation. It was about memory. The Dominion remembered. At first, the High Synod had ignored humanity's expansion. Space was vast, and the humans seemed agreeable. They traded honestly, honored treaties, colonized dead worlds no one else wanted. Then they crossed the line. 3 human settlements established within the Nerith Expanse. 3 flags planted in soil the Dominion had marked as theirs long before humans had invented agriculture. Diplomatic protests followed. Warnings. Threats. The humans replied with legal arguments. Valrix scoffed. You do not argue borders with fire older than your species. The Synod's order had been simple. Make an example. 1 hour later, Valrix stood on the command dais of the flagship Eminent Verdict. His image broadcast across the fleet. Warriors of the Dominion, he began, voice resonant and controlled. Today we restore memory. Silence answered him, fleet-wide attention absolute. A young species believes growth excuses trespass. They mistake our patience for weakness. They think history begins when they arrive. His claws tightened on the railing. They are wrong. A ripple of approval echoed through countless bridges. Our target is a human colony world designated Havenfall, their largest settlement within the expanse. When we are finished, nothing remains. No cities, no infrastructure, no survivors. Not cruelty. Instruction. Let the galaxy remember why the Karnathi endure. Cheers erupted across the fleet. Valrix felt satisfaction bloom in his chest. It had been too long since the Dominion reminded the younger races what supremacy looked like. We jump in 6 hours, he concluded. Prepare. The transmission ended. As officers returned to their stations, a softer voice spoke behind him. Marshal, permission to speak. Valrix turned slowly. A junior analyst stood rigid, pale-scaled, her insignia marking her as substrategist Ella Raven, barely 40 cycles old. What is it? Valrix asked coolly. She swallowed. I have concerns regarding human military capabilities. A familiar irritation surfaced. Speak, he said, already dismissing her. Our intelligence is incomplete, Ella said carefully. We lack confirmed data on human warships. No combat records. No verified specifications. Because there are none, Valrix replied flatly. Humans have never fought a real war. Yes, Marshal, but that absence is itself unusual. 17 reconnaissance vessels sent into human-controlled space over 2 cycles. Only 4 returned. Frontier losses, Veilric snapped. Navigation failures. Pirate interference. Possibly, Elora said, but our raiders report something else. Human settlements that do not resist, do not flee, do not signal distress. Veilrix narrowed his eyes. They simply vanish after contact, she finished quietly. For a moment, silence stretched. Then Veilrix laughed, a deep, rolling sound that echoed across the bridge. Sub-strategist, he said, stepping closer. You are confusing absence with mystery. Power announces itself. The Dominion announces itself. He gestured toward the viewport, where warships glimmered like steel gods. This fleet carries enough firepower to crack planets. Shields that can drink stellar cores. Weapons refined across 10,000 years. He leaned in, his voice low. There is nothing humanity can hide from that. Elora lowered her gaze. Yes, Marshal. Good, he said. Return to duty, and keep speculation off open channels. She obeyed. Veilrix dismissed her from thought entirely. 6 hours passed swiftly. Final checks. Weapons primed. Warriors recited ancient odes. Engineers verified jump coordinates down to atomic tolerances. Veilrix reviewed the assault plan for the 100th time. Standard entry. Full encirclement. 1 formal demand to surrender. Ceremony only. Then planetary bombardment. Clean. Efficient. At the appointed moment, he returned to the dais. All vessels, he commanded. Engage hyperspace. Stars stretched into light. The fleet vanished. Less than an hour later, real space returned. Havenfall hung before them, a blue-green world serene and unaware. No hostile contacts, reported Corvin. As expected, Veilrix said calmly, advance formation. The fleet moved. 130 warships toward a helpless colony. Then, Marshal, a sensor officer shouted. Hyperspace rupture detected. Edge of system. Veilrix frowned. Human reinforcements? Unknown. Count 1 vessel. Laughter rippled across the bridge. 1. Veilrix said. Display. The screen shifted, and Veilrix stopped smiling. The ship was wrong. Too smooth. Too dark. Its hull swallowed light instead of reflecting it. Angles shifted subtly when observed directly. Sensors struggled to assign mass. Readings fluctuated wildly. What am I looking at? Corvin whispered. Veilrix felt something unfamiliar brush his thoughts. Not fear. Unease. Signal interceptor squadron, he ordered. 12 ships. Capture if possible. As the destroyers moved, Veilrix watched the lone human vessel drift forward, unhurried, unafraid. And for the first time in centuries, the old empire did not feel alone in the dark. The 12 Karnathi destroyers advanced in a flawless spear formation. Each vessel was a predator by design. 200 meters of reinforced hull, layered shielding, and weapon arrays capable of cracking moons. They had crushed rebellions, erased pirate kingdoms, and ended wars before they began. Against them floated a single human ship, Captain Razek Morrowan, commander of the lead destroyer Silent Alone. Watched the target with professional detachment. 37 campaigns. 0 defeats. Range, he asked. Closing. Weapons distance in 90 seconds. The human vessel did not maneuver. It did not accelerate. It simply drifted, black against the stars, absorbing light, ignoring the laws Razek had trusted his entire life. No response to hails? He asked. None, Captain. Razek's mandibles tightened. Either the humans were foolish beyond measure, or they were confident. All ships, he transmitted. Weapons free. Disable the vessel. Boarding teams prepare. Acknowledgements returned instantly. The squadron split, encircling the target from all vectors. There will be no escape. Weapons range, the tactical officer announced. Mark. Fire. The void erupted. Plasma lances streaked forward, brilliant and lethal. Missiles followed, dozens of them, each carrying continent-shattering payloads. Kinetic rounds screamed through space at relativistic speeds, invisible until impact. The human ship vanished behind a wall of fire. For 5 seconds, Razek allowed himself to breathe. Then the sensors recalibrated. The human vessel was still there, untouched. No scorched hull, no shield flare, no sign it had even noticed the attack. "What?" someone whispered. Razek leaned forward. "Scan again." The tactical officer's claws trembled. "Captain, the kinetic rounds." Razek stared. Every projectile hung motionless in space. Thousands of rounds, each one fired at a fraction of light speed. Frozen less than 10 meters in the human hull, suspended as if trapped in invisible amber. "That's impossible," Razek said. The human ship began to glow. Not heat, not radiation. Something colder. Space itself rippled around the vessel, bending inward. The frozen rounds began to dissolve, atom by atom, drawn into the light like dust into a vacuum. Then reality folded. Razek felt it before he saw it. A pressure, a compression, space squeezing inward from all directions. The silent talons stretched, not metaphorically. The hull elongated like soft metal pulled by unseen hands. Bulkheads screamed. Consoles warped. Crew were crushed in their harnesses before they could cry out. For 3 seconds, existence was pain. Then, nothing. On the bridge of the imminent verdict, silence reigned. Fleet Marshal Valrix stared at the tactical display. The 12 destroyer icons were gone. Not disabled. Not fading. Gone. "Report," he demanded. Commander Corvin swallowed. No signals. No debris fields large enough to suggest standard destruction. It's as if they were erased. Valrix's claws dug into the railing. That was not possible. "Transmission incoming," a sensor officer said quietly. "From the human vessel. Put it through." The main display shifted. There was no image, only text written in flawless Karnathi script, glowing white against black. "You have been judged. Withdraw or face extinction. Asterisk, asterisk." The bridge froze. No threats. No explanation. Just consequence. Valrix felt anger surge, hot and sharp, slicing through the unease. "One ship," he growled. "One ship dares judge us?" "Marshal," Corvin said carefully, "what we witnessed, our weapons had no effect. That vessel destroyed 12 warships in seconds." "Enough!" Valrix snapped. Fear spreads faster than fire. He turned, addressing the entire bridge. "The humans possess a weapon. A trick. Impressive, but finite." He activated fleet-wide broadcast. "All vessels," he declared. "You have witnessed an enemy demonstration. Nothing more. No single ship stands against a Dominion." His voice hardened. "We will respond as we always have." The message still glowed on the screen. "Withdraw or face extinction." Valrix raised a claw. "All ships, prepare full engagement. We will overwhelm that vessel with force it cannot deny." Across the fleet, warriors stirred. Pride flared. Fear was buried beneath doctrine and history. One ship could not face 118. It could not. At her station, sub-strategist Ella Raven felt her scales pale. She had seen the data. This was no trick. The way space folded, the way energy vanished, the absence of any detectable mechanism. This was not technology. This was authority. "All ships in position," announced the fleet coordinator. "Awaiting command." Valrix stood tall. "Fire." 118 warships unleashed hell. The void became a star. Plasma converged from every angle. Missiles filled space by the thousands. Kinetic fire formed a storm so dense it blotted out the stars themselves. For 10 seconds, the human ship disappeared behind annihilation. Then the storm stopped. Every weapon hung frozen. Every beam, missile, and projectile suspended in perfect stillness around the human vessel. The ship glowed brighter. Ellara's blood ran cold. "It's reversing the field," she whispered. "Marshal." Too late. The frozen storm turned. Every weapon screamed back towards origin. Faster, stronger, amplified beyond design limits. Ships died before alarms could sound. 40 vessels vanished in the first second. Cruisers folded like paper. Battleships detonated as their own fire punched through their cores. Formations collapsed into chaos. The human ship moved. Not flight, presence. It appeared beside one vessel, space folding inward, and that ship ceased to exist. Then another. Then another. It was everywhere. Veilrix watched his fleet die. 80 ships gone. 90. 1,000 years of doctrine undone in moments. How many remain? He whispered. Elloret checked the display. Her voice shook. 11, Marshal. 11. Out of 130. Retreat, Corvin said hoarsely. We must warn the Synod. Veilrix stared at the glowing human vessel amid the wreckage of his empire's pride. Order, retreat, he said, the word tasting like ash. The survivors fled. The human ship did not pursue. It simply watched and sent one final message. The 12 Karnathi destroyers advanced in a flawless spear formation. Each vessel was a predator by design. 200 meters of reinforced hull, layered shielding, and weapon arrays capable of cracking moons. They had crushed rebellions, erased pirate kingdoms, and ended wars before they began. Against them floated a single human ship, Captain Razek Morrowan, commander of the lead destroyer Silent Alone. Watched the target with professional detachment. 37 campaigns. 0 defeats. Range, he asked. Closing. Weapons distance in 90 seconds. The human vessel did not maneuver. It did not accelerate. It simply drifted, black against the stars, absorbing light, ignoring the laws Razek had trusted his entire life. No response to hails? He asked. None, Captain. Razek's mandibles tightened. Either the humans were foolish beyond measure, or they were confident. All ships, he transmitted. Weapons free. Disable the vessel. Boarding teams prepare. Acknowledgements returned instantly. The squadron split, encircling the target from all vectors. There'll be no escape. Weapons range, the tactical officer announced. Mark. Fire. The void erupted. Plasma lances streaked forward, brilliant and lethal. Missiles followed, dozens of them, each carrying continent-shattering payloads. Kinetic rounds screamed through space at relativistic speeds, invisible until impact. The human ship vanished behind a wall of fire. For 5 seconds, Razek allowed himself to breathe. Then the sensors recalibrated. The human vessel was still there, untouched. No scorched hull, no shield flare, no sign it had even noticed the attack. What? Someone whispered. Razek leaned forward. Scan again. The tactical officer's claws trembled. Captain, the kinetic rounds. Razek stared. Every projectile hung motionless in space. Thousands of rounds, each one fired at a fraction of light speed. Frozen less than 10 meters in the human hull, suspended as if trapped in invisible amber. That's impossible, Razek said. The human ship began to glow. Not heat, not radiation. Something colder. Space itself rippled around the vessel, bending inward. The frozen rounds began to dissolve, atom by atom, drawn into the light like dust into a vacuum. Then reality folded. Razek felt it before he saw it. A pressure, a compression, space squeezing inward from all directions. The silent talon stretched, not metaphorically. The hull elongated like soft metal pulled by unseen hands. Bulkheads screamed. Consoles warped. Crew were crushed in their harnesses before they could cry out. For 3 seconds, existence was pain. Then, nothing. On the bridge of the eminent verdict, silence reigned. Fleet Marshal Veilrix stared at the tactical display. The 12 destroyer icons were gone. Not disabled. Not fading. Gone. Report, he demanded. Commander Corvin swallowed. No signals. No debris fields large enough to suggest standard destruction. It's as if they were erased. Veilrix's claws dug into the railing. That was not possible. Transmission incoming, a sensor officer said quietly. From the human vessel. Put it through. The main display shifted. There was no image, only text written in flawless Karnathi script, glowing white against black. You have been judged. Withdraw or face extinction. ****. The The bridge froze. No threats. No explanation. Just consequence. Veilrix felt anger surge, hot and sharp, slicing through the unease. One ship, he growled. One ship dares judge us? Marshal, Corvin said carefully, what we witnessed, our weapons had no effect. That vessel destroyed 12 warships in seconds. Enough. Veilrix snapped. Fear spreads faster than fire. He turned, addressing the entire bridge. The humans possess a weapon. A trick. Impressive, but finite. He activated fleet-wide broadcast. All vessels, he declared. You have witnessed an enemy demonstration. Nothing more. No single ship stands against the Dominion. His voice hardened. We will respond as we always have. The message still glowed on the screen. Withdraw or face extinction. Veilrix raised a claw. All ships, prepare full engagement. We will overwhelm that vessel with force it cannot deny. Across the fleet, warriors stirred. Pride flared. Fear was buried beneath doctrine and history. One ship could not face 118. It could not. At her station, sub-strategist Elora Venn felt her scales pale. She had seen the data. This was no trick. The way space folded, the way energy vanished, the absence of any detectable mechanism. This was not technology. This was authority. All ships in position. Announced the fleet coordinator. Awaiting command. Veilrix stood tall. Fire. 118 warships unleashed hell. The void became a star. Plasma converged from every angle. Missiles filled space by the thousands. Kinetic fire formed a storm so dense it blotted out the stars themselves. For 10 seconds, the human ship disappeared behind annihilation. Then the storm stopped. Every weapon hung frozen. Every beam, missile, and projectile suspended in perfect stillness around the human vessel. The ship glowed brighter. Elora's blood ran cold. It's reversing the field, she whispered. Marshal, too late. The frozen storm turned. Every weapon screamed back towards origin, faster, stronger, amplified beyond design limits. Ships died before alarms could sound. 40 vessels vanished in the first second. Cruisers folded like paper. Battleships detonated as their own fire punched through their cores. Formations collapsed into chaos. The human ship moved. Not flight, presence. It appeared beside one vessel, space folding inward, and that ship ceased to exist. Then another. Then another. It was everywhere. Veilrix watched his fleet die. 80 ships gone. 90. 1,000 years of doctrine undone in moments. How many remain? He whispered. Elora checked the display. Her voice shook. 11, Marshal. 11. Out of 130. Retreat, Corvin said hoarsely. We must warn the Synod. Veilrix stared at the glowing human vessel amid the wreckage of his empire's pride. Order, retreat, he said, the word tasting like ash. The survivors fled. The human ship did not pursue. It simply watched and sent one final message. The High Synod chamber remained silent long after Fleet Marshal Veilrix was escorted out. No chants, no arguments, no proclamations of vengeance. Just a quiet weight of reality settling onto 12 ancient minds. For the first time in 12,000 years, the valiant Dominion did not know what to do. Archlord Sereth was the first to speak. This report assumes the humans allowed the fleet to escape intentionally. Sub-strategist Elora Venn stood straight. Yes, Archlord. And you are certain this was not a tactical limitation? Elora did not hesitate. If that vessel had pursued us, there would be no survivors to report anything at all. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. One Archlord leaned forward, scales bristling. You are suggesting that a single human ship could erase our civilization. No, Elora corrected quietly. I am suggesting it already proved it could. Silence returned. A projection hovered above the chamber. Paused footage of the destroyer squadron folding on itself. Space collapsing like fabric pulled through a ring. That was not firepower, Elora continued. That was authority. The kind that doesn't compete. It decides. Another Archlord scoffed. No species gained such power in 3 centuries. That is correct, Elra said, which means they didn't gain it. The chamber stirred. You believe this power is inherited? One asked. Discovered, Elra replied. Recovered, or awakened. She brought up another data layer. Long-range sensor echoes recorded anomalies during the engagement, patterns far older than our civilization, older than hyperspace itself. The implications settled heavily. Archlord Sereth exhaled slowly. Ancient technology. Yes. Precursor weapons? Elra shook her head. Weapons don't judge. This did. Another Archlord slammed a claw against the armrest. Enough mysticism. We need solutions. Elra met his gaze. There are none that involve force. The chamber erupted. You expect the Dominion to kneel? To submit? To beg forgiveness from a species we outlived by 10 millennia? Elra waited, letting the outrage burn itself out. When the room quieted, she spoke again. I expect the Dominion to survive. That word carried more weight than any threat. Survive. Archlord Sereth looked toward the sealed chamber doors where Veilrix had exited. The fleet marshal was broken, he said quietly. Yes, Elra replied, because he witnessed the end of certainty. She turned to the council. We believed power meant superiority. They have shown us power means restraint. Another Archlord leaned back, claws steepled. Then why issue a warning at all? Why not simply erase us? Elra answered honestly. Because extinction was not their goal. Correction was. Correction? Someone echoed bitterly. Yes, she said. They intervened only when we crossed a line. Silence again. Finally, Archlord Sereth asked a question none of them wanted to ask. What happens if we cross it again? Elra didn't soften her answer. There will be no survivors. And no warning. The High Synod adjourned without ceremony. No vote was taken. None was needed. The age of certainty had ended. 3 cycles later, Elra stood alone in the orbital observation ring above Karna Prime. Below her, the capital world turned slowly. Cities gleaming, traffic flowing, citizens unaware that their empire now existed at the mercy of something it could not fight. She replayed the battle again in her mind. The stillness, the reversal, the calm precision. Not rage, not cruelty, just inevitability. A presence enforcing a boundary. She understood now why the human ship had waited after the fleet retreated. It had been giving them time. Time to think. Time to choose. Her console chimed. An encrypted transmission. Origin, unknown vector. Authentication. Human. Her breath caught. She accepted. Text appeared. Simple. Unadorned. We will not pursue further action. Your retreat has been acknowledged. Future interactions will be determined by your choices. No threats. No demands. Just consequence. Elra stared at the words for a long time. Then she forwarded the message directly to the High Synod. The debate that followed was the fiercest in Valant history. Hardliners demanded retaliation. Moderates argued caution. Traditionalists spoke of honor. Realists spoke of extinction. Elra said little. She simply presented facts. Every simulation showed the same result. Engagement meant annihilation. Finally, Archlord Sereth raised a claw for silence. We have ruled through conquest for 12,000 years, he said, and now we face something that does not wish to rule us. The chamber stilled. Perhaps, he continued, that should terrify us more than any enemy ever has. A younger Archlord snarled. You would have us submit? Sereth shook his head slowly. No, I would have us adapt. Elra felt something loosen in her chest. Sereth turned to her. Sub-strategist Elra Ven. You warned the fleet before departure. Yes. And you were ignored. Yes. You survived. You understood. You speak without illusion. He straightened. You will lead our response. The chamber erupted again, but this time not in outrage. In shock, Elra bowed her head. I will serve. Sereth's eyes hardened. Prepare a diplomatic vessel, not a warship, not an envoy of dominance. He paused. An envoy of humility. The word tasted strange in the chamber, but no one objected. As Elora left the Senate Hall, she glanced once more at the stars beyond the viewport. Somewhere out there, the human ships waited, not advancing, not threatening, simply present. She understood the message now. Humanity did not conquer. Humanity enforced balance. And the galaxy was no longer ruled by those who struck first, but by those who decided when not to. The diplomatic vessel Quiet, resolved, departed Karna Prime without ceremony. No escort fleet, no honor guard, no weapons powered beyond minimum navigation requirements. For the first time in Valen history, an official mission left their homeworld without the assumption of superiority. Elora Ven stood at the forward viewport as the planet shrank behind them. 12,000 years of conquest lay beneath those clouds. And for the first time, none of it felt permanent. The Quiet resolve was built for dialogue, not intimidation. Elegant hull, soft internal lighting, spacious chambers meant to project calm rather than strength. Its shields were thin, its weapons symbolic. If the humans chose to destroy it, nothing aboard would stop them. That, Elora realized, was a point. The human response arrived less than one cycle into the journey. Not a hail, not a warning. Coordinates. A meeting place far from any star system. Deep in interstellar dark, where no one could claim territory. The humans did not want witnesses. They did not want theater. They wanted clarity. The crew grew quiet as the ship approached the coordinates. Sensors showed nothing. No ships, no stations, no energy signatures. Just emptiness. Then space folded. The human vessel appeared without transition, without motion, without warning. One moment the stars were uninterrupted. The next it was there, black, silent, impossibly present. The same ship, the one that had erased a fleet. Elora felt her instinct scream. The captain whispered, "No energy spike. It's just there." A transmission opened automatically. No visuals. Only a calm human voice, speaking perfect Valen standard. "You are expected. Proceed forward. Do not alter course." The captain glanced at Elora. She nodded once. The Quiet resolve advanced. Distance closed, and then reality bent. There was no sensation of movement, no acceleration, no warning. The stars vanished. The diplomatic ship now floated inside a vast chamber. Smooth white surfaces curved in every direction, lit without visible sources. The scale was impossible to judge. Large enough to hold cities, silent enough to hear one's own breath. Around them hung other ships, not dozens, not hundreds, 12, identical to the first, each one radiating the same quiet authority. The captain whispered a prayer to gods Elora no longer believed in. Elora felt the truth settle fully for the first time. What they had faced was not an exception. It was a system. A voice spoke again. "Welcome aboard the Prometheus." A shuttle detached from the nearest vessel, gliding toward them without visible propulsion. Elora straightened. "Prepare delegation," she said calmly. "We are guests." Guests. The word felt unreal. The shuttle was small, human-built, minimalistic, no weapons visible, no restraints. A human pilot greeted them with a polite nod and nothing more. No fear, no hostility, just procedure. They crossed the distance in silence. As the shuttle docked, Elora studied the human ship up close. The hull absorbed light completely. Not reflective, not matte, void. Angles shifted when viewed directly, as if the ship disagreed with being observed. Elora understood then. This vessel did not exist entirely in normal space. It tolerated it. They disembarked into a corridor that looked ordinary. White walls, clean floors, soft lighting, no statues, no trophies, no intimidation, just function. At the end of the corridor stood a human, female, middle-aged, calm expression, no visible weapons, no rank insignia. She smiled. Substrategist Elora Ven, the human said, "I'm Captain Marahavel. You're safe here." Safe. The word carried weight. Elora inclined her head. "Thank you for agreeing to this meeting." Captain Havel gestured forward. "Please, We don't like standing on ceremony. They entered a conference chamber with transparent walls looking out into starless dark. The other human ships hung there, silent, watching. Elora sat opposite the captain. No guards flanked either side. No power displays. No dominance rituals. Just two representatives across a table. You sent a fleet, Havel said gently, to destroy civilians. Yes, Eller replied. That was our intent. And now you're here. Yes. Why? Elora did not evade it. Because we now understand what happens if we choose wrong. Havel studied her for a long moment. You survived, she said. That matters. Elora frowned. You spared us. We corrected you, Havel replied. There's a difference. Silence stretched. Elora finally asked a question that haunted her. Why not end us? Havel leaned back slightly. Because your extinction solves nothing. It only proves we failed. Failed at what? Teaching. The word landed heavier than any threat. You wanted us to learn, Elora said. Yes. And if we hadn't? Havel's eyes hardened, not with anger, but certainty. Then you wouldn't be here. Elora absorbed that. What are you? She asked quietly. Havel did not smile. We are a species that learned the cost of unchecked power the hard way, long before we found Prometheus. Elora's attention sharpened. Prometheus? That's the class designation. Titan-class custodial vessels. Custodial, not warship. Custodian. Havel continued. We didn't build them. We found them. Incomplete. Dormant. Waiting. For what? For someone reckless enough to activate them and disciplined enough not to abuse them. Elora felt a chill. You passed that test? We nearly didn't. Havel said honestly. That debate almost tore our species apart. Elora believed her. Why show us this? Elora asked. The others, the full strength. Because lies don't last, Havel replied. And fear built on ignorance breeds bad decisions. She leaned forward slightly. We don't rule the galaxy. We don't want to, but we will not allow genocide, conquest, or annihilation to continue unchecked. Elora met her gaze. And if a civilization refuses to stop? Havel answered without hesitation. Then we stop them, not with anger, not with pride, with finality. Elora understood then. Humanity had not become gods. They had become wardens. And the galaxy was no longer free to burn itself unchecked. The meeting ended without signatures, without treaties, only an understanding. As the delegation returned to their shuttle, Elora looked once more at the 12 silent titans. They were not symbols of conquest. They were limits. And for the first time in Valiant history, Elora felt something she had never felt before. Relief. The return journey felt longer, though the distance was the same. The quiet resolve moved through hyperspace in near silence. No one spoke unless required. No one celebrated survival. They had not won anything. They had been allowed to leave. Elora remained in her quarters for most of the journey, replaying the meeting again and again. Not the words, the tone. Captain Havel had never threatened them. She hadn't needed to. Power like that did not posture. It stated boundaries and waited. That frightened Elora more than the battle ever had. When Karnath Prime finally appeared in the viewport, the crew visibly relaxed. Home had always meant safety. Now, it simply meant familiarity. The orbital council demanded immediate audience. Elora did not delay. The Synod chamber filled faster than it ever had before. News had spread. Rumors, fragments, panic dressed as confidence. They all looked at her when she entered, waiting. Elora stood at the center platform and spoke before anyone could interrupt. There are 12 of them. The chamber froze. 12 Titan-class vessels, she continued. All identical. All operational. Outrage erupted instantly. 12. Why were we not told this sooner? This changes everything. Elora raised a claw. It doesn't change the outcome, she said calmly. Only the illusion that we ever had options. Silence returned, brittle and uneasy. Archlord Seraph leaned forward. Explain. Elora did. She described the chamber beyond space, the ships waiting in formation, the calm certainty of Captain Havel, the absence of negotiation tactics. They did not ask for submission, Elora said. They did not demand tribute or territory. They did not even propose a treaty. Then what do they want? One Archlord demanded. Elora met his eyes. They want behavior to change. Confusion rippled through the chamber. They do not care who rules which systems, she continued. They care about how power is used. That is not how the galaxy works. Another Archlord snapped. It is now, Elora replied. Saratha's voice was quieter. What happens if we ignore them? Elora did not hesitate. There will be no warnings next time. The weight of that settled deep. A hardliner rose abruptly. This is fear speaking. We ruled before humanity discovered fire. We will rule after they overextend. Elora turned toward him. They have already overextended, she said. They chose restraint anyway. The hardliner scoffed. And you trust that? No, Elora answered. I understand it. She activated projection. It showed recorded encounters. Other civilizations. Other fleets. Those who tested boundaries vanished. Those who adapted flourished. The humans don't conquer, Elora said. They curate outcomes. The chamber absorbed that in silence. Sarath closed his eyes briefly. When does the next human response occur? They said future interactions depend on our choices, Elora replied, which means they are watching. The Senate adjourned in disorder, not because of disagreement, because certainty had died. Change did not come all at once. It never did. First came policy shifts framed as efficiency reforms. Raiding fleets were recalled. Border aggression was paused temporarily. Diplomatic channels reopened with species long subjugated by fear. The military protested quietly, then loudly, then not at all, because simulations told the same story every time. Resistance equaled erasure. Within months, trade corridors stabilized. Former enemies hesitated before acting. Whispers spread across the sector. Something had changed. Something enforced. Elora watched it all from a distance. She had been promoted. The title felt hollow. Power meant something different now. One cycle later, another message arrived. Human origin. No preamble. No ceremony. Boundary violation detected. Non-compliant actor neutralized. Collateral avoided. Coordinates followed. Elora knew what that meant. Another civilization had crossed the line. She forwarded the message to the Synod. There was no debate, no vote. The humans had not asked permission. They never would. They acted. The galaxy learned quickly. Pirate coalitions dissolved overnight. Slaver networks vanished without trace. Wars stalled, then ended, not with treaties but with hesitation. No one knew where the Titans were at any given moment. That was the point. Presence did not require visibility. Fear did not require pursuit. Years passed. A generation grew up knowing that annihilation was no longer negotiable. Elora aged faster than she expected. Not physically. Mentally. She carried the burden of knowing what stood beyond the stars. What waited if restraint failed. One evening, as Karnath Prime turned beneath the viewport, she received another message. Not a warning. An invitation. Observation request approved. Limited access granted. Non-military. Her breath caught. They were inviting her back. Not as a supplicant. As a participant. The ship that arrived for her did not announce itself. It simply appeared. Smaller than the Titans. Still human. Still impossible. The pilot greeted her politely. No awe. No intimidation. Just routine. They traveled not to Prometheus, but to something else, a station, or what passed for one. It existed partially outside observable space, a place where the Titans docked, rested, waited. Inside, Elora saw things no Valant had ever seen, architectural remnants older than her civilization, interfaces that responded to thought, human technicians working alongside systems they barely understood, maintaining power they could never fully control. They were not masters. They were caretakers. Captain Havel met her again. You want to understand, she said. Yes, Eller replied. Havel gestured around them. This is the burden we carry. Power no one asked for. Responsibility no one prepared us for. Why show me this? Elora asked. Because fear without context leads to rebellion, Havel said. Understanding leads to restraint. Elora looked at the Titans. They could destroy everything, she said quietly. Yes, Havel agreed. And they don't. Yes. Elora exhaled slowly. Then, perhaps, she said, this is the first time power chose maturity. Havel smiled faintly. Or the first time a universe gave someone a second chance. Elora returned to Karna Prime changed. Not fearful, aware. The galaxy was no longer a battlefield. It was a system under supervision. And humanity was not its ruler. It was its final safeguard. The first assassination attempt failed quietly. That was the most dangerous part. Elora was returning from a council session when her transport corridor sealed without warning. Lights dimmed. Security fields dropped for exactly 3 seconds. 3 seconds was all a professional needed. The blast never reached her. It never existed. Space around the charge folded inward, compressing the explosion into a soundless knot of energy that vanished before heat could bloom. The corridor lights returned to normal. Her escort froze. Elora stood still, heart pounding, already knowing what this meant. The humans had intervened, not with fire, not with punishment, with correction. A message arrived before anyone could speak. Internal escalation detected. Lethal outcome prevented. This is your final notice. Final. The word echoed louder than the explosion that never happened. Within hours, Karnath Prime was in chaos. Hardliner factions denied involvement. Security councils demanded explanations. Military leadership argued sovereignty. Elora said nothing. She didn't need to. The truth was already undeniable. The Titans were not watching borders. They were watching intent. And someone had crossed it. The Synod convened in emergency session. Archlord Sereth looked older than Elora remembered. This was an internal matter, one counselor insisted. Foreign interference. Saved a life, Sereth interrupted quietly. Silence followed. They did not punish us, he continued. They did not retaliate. They did not even expose the perpetrators. His gaze hardened. They warned us. A hardliner rose. This proves our point. We are no longer sovereign. Elora finally spoke. Sovereignty does not include the right to genocide or assassination. The chamber stirred. You would trade our independence for survival. I would trade our illusions for reality, Elora replied. She stepped forward. The humans did not act to protect me. I was irrelevant. They acted to prevent escalation. She met their eyes one by one. They are not managing us. They are managing outcomes. Another counselor whispered, We are children under supervision. Elora shook her head. No, we are adults who are no longer allowed to burn the house down. The vote that followed was decisive. The hardliner faction was dissolved, not arrested, not executed, removed, influence stripped, funding cut. The Dominion changed course officially that day, not through fear, through understanding. The galaxy noticed. Species long oppressed by Karna fleets began reopening channels. Trade routes shifted. Old enemies spoke cautiously. For the first time in recorded history, wars ended without victors. They simply stopped because escalation no longer promised advantage, only annihilation. Elora received invitations she never expected. Mediations, arbitrations, disputes where her presence mattered not because of force, but because she understood where the line was. Humanity never attended these talks. They never needed to. Everyone already knew the consequence of crossing that line. Years passed. Elora aged. So did Captain Havel. So did the galaxy. But the Titans did not. They remained, watching, waiting, correcting. One day, a message arrived marked differently. Not a warning, not an observation. A request. Guardian oversight transfer under review. Candidate evaluation required. Elora's breath caught. Oversight transfer. She was summoned again, not to a Titan, but to a human world. Earth. The journey felt symbolic. The birthplace of a species that had nearly destroyed itself before choosing restraint. Elora stepped onto the planet with no escort, no ceremony, just curiosity. Human cities felt fragile. Glass towers, green spaces, crowds that laughed and argued and hurried through ordinary lives. This species commanded gods, and lived like this. Captain Havel met her beneath open sky. No armor, Elora noted. Havel smiled. Never needed it. They walked, past markets. Children, old humans arguing over trivial things. Why me? Elora asked. Havel stopped. Because we are tired, she said simply. Tired? Tired of being the final answer. Tired of standing alone at the edge of extinction events. She looked at Elora. The Titans were never meant to be permanent guardians. They were meant to buy time. For what? For the galaxy to grow up. Elora felt the weight of that. You think we're ready? No, Havel said honestly, but you're closer than most. They stood on a hill overlooking a city at dusk. Lights flickered on as the sun set. You stood between your people and annihilation, Havel continued. You chose restraint. You dismantled your own hardliners without blood. She turned. That is the kind of leadership the Titans were built to protect. Elora was silent. What are you asking? She finally said. Havel's voice was calm. To help decide when we step back. The words hit harder than any threat ever could. You would give this power up? No, Havel said. We would share the burden of deciding when it must be used. Elora looked out over the city, at a species that had found gods and chosen not to become them. You trust us? Havel nodded slowly. Enough to try. That night, Elora watched Earth stars from a human balcony. She understood then. The Titans were not humanity's triumph. They were humanity's test. And the test was ongoing. The galaxy was quieter now. Not peaceful, but restrained. And restraint, Elora had learned, was the hardest form of strength there was. The announcement was never made publicly. There were no broadcasts, no declarations, no grand speeches about a new age. That was deliberate. The galaxy did not need reassurance. It needed stability. Elora's role changed quietly after her return from Earth. Her title remained the same, but her authority did not come from the Senate anymore. It came from something far less visible. Understanding. She became the one called when lines blurred, when two civilizations stood at the edge of escalation and did not realize it, when ambition began to outweigh sense, when someone believed the Titans were a myth. The first test came sooner than expected. A border conflict between the Karate Combine and the Selrex Union escalated over a resource-rich system. Both sides mobilized fleets. Both sides claimed provocation. Old rules would have turned it into war. Elora arrived before the first shots were fired. She did not threaten. She did not negotiate. She showed them projections, simulations, outcomes, not hypotheticals, certainties. If either of you fires, she said calmly, the Titans will intervene. The Selrex commander laughed. You speak of ghosts. Elora nodded once. Then fire. Silence followed. No one did. The fleets withdrew within the hour. The galaxy noticed. Not the words. The pause. Power was no longer proven by who struck first. It was proven by who stopped themselves. Years passed. Trade flourished in places once ruled by fear. Borders softened. Not erased. Respected. The Titans remained unseen, which made them more powerful than ever. Elora aged into her role. Her scales dulled. Her steps slowed. Her mind sharpened. She understood the difference between control and stewardship now. Humanity never issued laws, never enforced culture. They enforced only one thing: limits. One evening, Elora received a message that carried a weight she had hoped never to feel again. Unauthorized deep space activation detected. Artifact origin, architect class. Probability of cascade event, high. Her breath caught. Someone had found something. Another relic. Another chance to become a god. Coordinates followed, beyond known space, beyond mapped territory, beyond restraint. Elora did not hesitate. She requested human accompaniment. The response was immediate. Approved. Titan presence minimal. Observation priority. Minimal that worried her more than a fleet ever had. The journey took weeks. When they arrived, the system was already changing. Stars flickered. Gravity behaved incorrectly. Sensors screamed contradictions. At the center of it all floated a structure. Ancient, broken, awakening. A civilization had found it, not one of the great powers. A minor species. New, afraid, desperate. They had activated something they did not understand. Elora watched their fleet cluster protectively around the artifact. Fear-driven, just like the Dominion once had been. This is how it starts, Elora said quietly. Captain Havel stood beside her. Yes, she agreed, and how it must end. The Titans did not arrive in force. Only one. It did not attack. It did not threaten. It stabilized. Space stopped tearing itself apart. The artifact's energy collapsed inward, contained. The lesser species ships powered down in shock. They had expected annihilation. Instead, they were corrected. A message was sent, not in threat, in explanation. You have encountered power beyond your capacity. Stand down. We will help you survive this mistake. Elora felt something tighten in her chest. Mercy. Again, the galaxy was learning. Slowly, painfully, but learning. Later, as the crisis ended and the artifact was sealed forever, Elora stood watching the Titan drift away. Will this ever stop? She asked. Havel shook her head. No. Curiosity is part of intelligence. Then the Titans will always be needed. Perhaps, Havel said. Or perhaps one day they won't. Elora turned to her. You still believe the galaxy can grow out of this? I believe it must, Havel replied. Or none of this means anything. Elora looked at the stars. At civilizations learning restraint, not because they wanted to, but because consequences had finally become real. The Titans were not gods. They were reminders. That power did not grant permission. That survival required humility. That dominance was temporary. Responsibility was not. As the ships turned back toward civilized space, Elora realized something profound. The humans had not changed the galaxy by force. They had changed it by making violence pointless. And that was far more terrifying, and far more hopeful, than conquest ever was. The galaxy did not celebrate the new order. It adjusted to it, slowly, reluctantly, unevenly. Some civilizations adapted quickly, reshaping doctrines, dismantling conquest fleets, rewriting laws that had once glorified expansion through force. Others resisted quietly. They stopped attacking openly, but they watched. They waited. They searched for loopholes. Elora knew this phase well. It was the most dangerous one, because belief had not yet replaced fear, and fear always sought a way out. The first real fracture appeared in the outer spiral. A coalition calling itself the Sovereign Continuum announced a declaration of autonomy, not rebellion, not war, independence. Their message was carefully worded. They recognized Titan authority. They respected the imposed limits, but they rejected external moral enforcement. In short, they wanted the Titans gone. Elora read the declaration 3 times, not because it confused her, because it frightened her. They're testing boundaries, she said quietly. Captain Havel stood beside her in the observation chamber. Yes, she agreed. Not with weapons, with philosophy. That's harder to stop. And harder to punish, Havel replied. The Continuum did not attack anyone. They simply withdrew cooperation. Trade routes closed. Shared monitoring systems shut down. Human observers were denied access. On paper, they were peaceful. In reality, they were building something. Elora felt it. Weeks later, confirmation arrived. Black market reports. Unverified sensor ghosts. Disappearing scouts. The Continuum had found an architect fragment. Not a Titan. Something smaller. Incomplete. Enough. Elora felt a familiar cold settle in her chest. They think they can replicate it, she said. Havel nodded. Or weaponize it. Either way, it ends the same, Havel finished. The debate within human leadership was brief. Intervention was authorized, but different this time. No Titan would appear. Not yet. Elora frowned. Why? Because this isn't about stopping violence, Havel said. It's about proving a point. The envoy sent to Continuum was unarmed. Human, civilian, transparent. They did not arrive with warnings. They arrived with data. Proof. Historical simulations. Failure cascades. Extinction timelines. The Continuum leadership listened politely, then refused. We acknowledge the risk, they said, but evolution has never favored the cautious. The envoy returned, empty-handed. Elora watched the recording in silence. They're convinced themselves they're different, she said. Everyone does, Havel replied. The fragment activated 2 days later. The system did not explode. That was a problem. It worked. Not fully, not cleanly, but enough. The Continuum demonstrated localized space manipulation. They froze a small asteroid field mid-motion. They reversed a test missile without detonation. They broadcast the results. A message to the galaxy. We are no longer bound. The reaction was immediate. Fear, hope, ambition. Elora felt the balance tilt. This is how it spreads, she said. Not through war. Through envy. Havel was quiet. Then the Titan arrived. Only one. No announcement. No warning. It appeared directly between the fragment and the Continuum fleet. Not aggressive. Just present. The fragment reacted violently. Energy surged. Space destabilized. The Titan absorbed it. Contained it. The fragment shattered. The backlash erased the Continuum shipyards, their command hubs, their fragment research facilities, but not their cities, not their people. When it ended, the Titan transmitted one message. Capability exceeded. Attempt terminated. Survival preserved. The Continuum leadership was arrested by their own people within hours. They had promised ascension. They delivered ruin. Elora watched the aftermath unfold across the stars. That was mercy, she said. Yes, Havel replied, and it won't be taken as such. No, Havel agreed. It never is. In the weeks that followed, something changed. Not fear, acceptance. Civilization stopped asking if the Titans were real. They stopped asking if they could be challenged. They began asking how to live within the limits. That question reshaped everything. Military academies taught restraint alongside strategy. Leaders measured success not by expansion, but by stability. Children grew up knowing the stories, not conquest, but collapse caused by overreach. Elora saw it in the data. Conflict rates dropped, not to zero, never to zero, but to survivable levels. One night, standing beneath artificial stars in a human orbital habitat, Elora asked a question that had waited too long. What happens when I'm gone? Havel did not answer immediately. When humanity found the Titans, she said, we asked the same thing, and we realized the question was wrong. She turned to Elora. The Titans don't depend on us. They don't depend on you. Then why involve us at all? Because understanding spreads better than fear, Havel said, and fear alone never lasts. Elora nodded slowly. She felt tired. Not physically, existentially. I won't live to see the end of this, she said. No one will, Havel replied. That's the point. Elora looked out at the stars, at a galaxy learning, slowly, painfully, to grow up, not because it wanted to, but because it finally had to. She understood now. The Titans were not the future. They were the bridge, and bridges were never meant to be permanent. They were meant to be crossed. The Titans did not announce their withdrawal. They never would. There were no ceremonies marking the moment the galaxy no longer needed guardians hovering at the edge of extinction. There was only absence. Elora noticed it first during a routine monitoring cycle. No Titan shadow in deep space. No corrective signals. No quiet confirmations that limits were being enforced. At first, she assumed a relocation. Then weeks passed. Then months. The galaxy did not burn. It hesitated. And that hesitation told her everything. Civilization still argued. Borders still shifted. Ambition still existed. But restraint had become instinct, not enforced. Learned. Elora stood in the same observation ring, where she had once watched her empire crumble. Now she watched trade lanes glow softly across star charts, alive with exchange instead of war. Captain Havel had been right. The Titans were never meant to stay. Humanity had not been chosen to rule. They had been chosen to hold the line long enough for everyone else to learn where it was. The final message arrived quietly, not encrypted, not dramatic, simply addressed to her. You were ready sooner than expected. We are stepping back. Elora closed her eyes. She felt no relief, only responsibility. Will you return? She asked. The reply took longer this time. When needed. She understood what that meant. Not gone. Dormant, like a fire extinguisher sealed behind glass. Never used unless everything else failed. The Titans vanished from perception entirely after that. No sightings, no interventions, no demonstrations. The galaxy held its breath, then continued. Years passed. Elora aged. Her scales dull further. Her movements slowed. But her mind remained sharp, shaped by truths few ever carried. She watched new leaders rise who had never known conquest fleets as symbols of glory. She listened to children recite histories where war was presented as tragedy, not destiny. She observed disputes settled by arbitration rather than annihilation, not because anyone forced them to, because escalation no longer promised reward. That was the real legacy. Humanity had not removed violence from the galaxy. They had removed its utility. On her final day of service, Elora returned to Karnath Prime's highest spire, the same world that had once believed itself eternal, the same skies that had once watched a fleet depart in arrogance. Below her, the city moved peacefully. No fear, no celebration, just life. A junior official approached quietly. Admiral Elora, he said with reverence, do you believe the Titans will ever be needed again? She considered the question for a long time. Yes, she said finally. Eventually. He looked troubled. Then have we failed? She smiled faintly. No. Failure would mean needing them constantly. She gestured toward the stars. The universe is vast. Intelligence is curious. Someone will always push too far. And then, she said softly, the reminder will return. The official nodded, comforted. Elora watched him leave. Her work was done. That night, she dreamed, not of war, not of Titans, but a quiet human city under open sky. Children laughing, lights turning on at dusk, a species that had nearly destroyed itself and chosen. Against every instinct to grow up, she woke with tears in her eyes, not from sadness, from gratitude. Her final act was a letter, transmitted to every major council in the sector. Not a warning, not an order, a reflection. We once believed strength meant the ability to dominate. We learned too late that domination only delays collapse. True strength is restraint. True power is the choice not to use it. The Titans were never gods. They were mirrors. They showed us what we could become if we refused to learn, and what we could survive if we did. The transmission ended without signature. Names were relevant now. Elora passed quietly days later. No state funeral. No monuments. Only remembrance. Across the galaxy, small changes followed. A treaty signed instead of a fleet launched. A border adjusted instead of contested. A weapon never built. Humanity continued much as it always had. Arguing. Inventing. Failing. Trying again. They did not rule. They observed. They hoped the galaxy would never need their final answer again. Somewhere beyond reception, 12 silent Titans remained dormant, waiting, not for conquest, not for dominance, but for the moment restraint failed completely. And if that moment never came, if the galaxy learned to live within its limits, then the Titans would never awaken, and that, Eller believed, would be humanity's greatest victory, not the power to end everything, but the wisdom to ensure they never had to. The old order had died without ceremony. The new one did not rise with banners. It simply endured, and among the stars, history quietly turned a page.